There are stories that don't need big twists and turns. To draw attention, just a memory, a silent pain, or that feeling of being alone, even when you're surrounded by people. Have stories that don't scream. They just whisper what we also feel. But he doesn't always have the courage to say, and when we hear it sounds like it was made for us. This is one of those stories is about a boy, but it could be about any one of us, because all of us, at some point, already called help in defense. We already wish someone could see the pain no one sees, and maybe, what did this boy find? Be exactly what you also need to hear today, but calm down. I won't tell you now. First, take a deep breath. Because what comes next can mess with you more than you imagine. The day began Sado at the orphanage Saint Gabriel. It was still dawn when the metallic sound of the gates opened with the usual creak. The first rays of sunlight flowed through the windows, dusty, drawing yellow stripes on the floor. Spending inside, children of all ages spread across the bank, some still sleepy, others already laughing high. There was life. There was movement, but there was also magic. The kind of pathology that only those who have already suffered. Too much can load, and that captain had the name Samuel sitting in the corner. Farthest from the room, he slowly turned to spoon in the porridge. Already cold, he didn't eat, he didn't speak. Just watched. The eyes of him had a depth that scared 9 years. But an old soul was, as if she had lived very long, more than I could stand. The noise around you seemed not to reach him even. The screams of children running around the table took him out of his stillness. Samuel was the type of boy that always seemed to be somewhere else, a place of his own, and in that place nobody more entered the majority. I didn't know where he had come from. Some children made up stories. They said he had run away from who was the son of or that he had powers. But the one who really knew the truth was Dona Augusta, a lady with sweet eyes, wrinkled skin, and steady hands that I had already taken care of children abandoned for years. She found him in a HD cold dawn, under a marquise hugging a blanket, dirty with purple lips and deep eyes. My son asked with his knees if you are hungry next to him. Samuel didn't answer, just looked at her, like who didn't believe that someone really cared. I brought soup as vegetables. It's hot, insisted she, offering a thermal bottle and a plastic cup. He hesitated for a moment, then put on the cup with trembling hands and drank slowly. When faced Dona Augusta de Novo, with eyes full of water, but without shedding any tears. I can go with the lady? Asked in a low voice. She smiled. Of course she can, my son. We'll give you a place to sleep and to start over on the way to the orphanage. They didn't say much, Samuel. Just watch this city, still dark through the car window. When they arrived, he went down slowly, looking, suspicious for the rusty gate and the building. Old is here? Asked, almost whispering. Yeah, it's not a castle, but it's safe. And here nobody. We'll drop you off at Rua de Novo. Okay, replied Dona Augusta, squeezing her shoulder. Okay, he said, and came in. The first few days were hard. He didn't talk to anyone. He slept with light. Lit had nightmares almost every night. Dona Augusta once went to her room and found him crying softly. Wants to talk? Asked, sitting next to the bed. Didn't he answer by hiding his face on the pillow? Fine, but when I want, I'm always here. He didn't say anything, but after that, began to leave the bedroom door open, like who wanted to be seen, even without having the courage to ask during the day. The children played in the courtyard. They made story wheels. They ran, they fought. They asked for cookie. Samuel just watched, didn't get involved, didn't laugh. If someone tried to start the conversation, he replied with, I don't know, that long ago. Or just with his shoulders, he just spoke a little more with Dona Augusta in the few moments in which he allowed himself to open his heart. Do you remember your mother's name? She asked one day, while folding clothes beside him. He was in Berlin for a while, then replied, I remember it was Anne and her father Mark. He called me the Semuka, and you liked that nickname. I liked it when he called me. It looked like everything was sure, you know. Yes, my son fell. Then he completed, but now nothing seems right. Dona Augusta felt the lump in her throat, but didn't let the tear fall. You've been through a lot, Samuel, and it's normal to feel like this, but you are not alone. Now he looked at her with serious eyes. But what if I lose that too? She held her hand. We just lose. When you give up loving, and you still have a lot of love for Da, even if you don't know it. Now these conversations, though brief, they sowed seeds. Samuel didn't change overnight, remained quiet, reserved. But little by little he responded with more than a gesture, began to accept when they called him to play ball. Even if he just stared, he sat, closer to the other children, ate everything on the plate, small gestures. But for those who carried such a heavy past, were victories though. Inside Samuel, there was something that no shelter, no hot food even, the silent affection of Donna Augusta, could fill a void that spread across the chest. Like a constant echo, it wasn't food cravings, not even cold. On the body was I miss a Colo who wouldn't come back. Was the fear of trusting Novo. Was the question that never left Boca. Because with me he never worked aloud. But she hammered in her thoughts. Night after night the orphanage gave roof, gave bed, gave security, but couldn't reach the hole that existed inside your chest. That week, Donna Beatriz, orphanage coordinator, appeared in the activity room with a personal novelty. Let's do something different. Each of you will tell. A story can be made up. May be true, may have dragons, castle heroes, or whatever you want, can even be a dream. The children vibrated with the idea immediately, helped to organize themselves by picking up paper-colored pencils, cutting figures from old magazines. The environment has transformed in a pool of tears, laughing crazy ideas, flying characters. It was as if there was a hidden portal inside, where the pain of the past did not exist. But Samuel continued in the corner, sitting at the table, further away, with pencil in hand and sheet in white. In front of him watched his colleagues laughing, drawing, inventing magic names. Was as if an invisible glass separate him from all of them. Have you ever thought about your story? Samuel asked Donna Beatriz, with that kind smile she always wore. He took a while to answer, I don't know. If I have any to tell. She approached and said, we all have, even if we think we don't. That night, Samuel took a while to sleep. Turned from side to side in bed. The ceiling looked darker than normal, the breath from the other children mixed to the sound of crickets outside, created a rhythm that should be comforting. But it wasn't him squeezing the blanket against his chest, feeling the cold that wasn't in the body. But from the soul, the eyes were filled with tears. But he didn't cry. Had already become used to swallowing the cry. Felt like a notebook that nobody wanted to read, a dumped book on the shelf of a forgotten library. Closed his eyes, trying to sleep. And that's when everything changed in the dream. He was in an open field over a sky. Absurdly starry place was a quiet but not scary place. A shield that embraced your front. An approaching light wasn't blinding. It wasn't too hot, it was a serene light. Engaging, that seemed to come from within something or someone. Samuel was afraid, was as if he were finally at home. The light took shape until a Serena figure appeared, with a calm countenance and eyes, who seemed to know all the pains in the world. It wasn't scary, it was familiar. The figure knelt in front of him and said in a soft voice, Samuel, you are not alone. The boy was speechless. It didn't look like a dream, it was real. Too much, who are you? He asked with a tremendous voice. I'm an envoy, and I came to remind you that there is someone who can walk with you every day, even when you think no one. But there is someone around who will never leave you. Samuel felt a lump in his chest. But why with me? Because now the figure smiled, like someone who understood every requirement of the boy. Because you asked, even without knowing. Because he listens until the mirror woke up with his face. Wet, I didn't know if I'd cried in my sleep, or if I was still crying. Sat in bed with a shot heart. Couldn't explain, I didn't even want to think much. Not to lose what I had felt was more than a dream, it was an encounter. Got up, slowly walked to the bedroom window and looked up at the still dark sky. The stars disappeared with the sunrise outside. The world followed, as if nothing had happened. But inside Samuel, something had changed. During breakfast, he was different. Still quiet, yes, but the eyes carried a subtle light. Dona Augusta noticed sitting next to her with a glass of coffee had a nightmare of new. He shook his head. Negatively was different. This time she didn't ask, but just waited, and then he said, "I dreamed of a man who talked to me. He told me that Jesus could walk with me." Dona Augusta smiled with dizzy eyes. "And you believed?" Samuel Hesitu wanted to believe. "But I'm afraid I'm just someone else who goes away." She touched his hand firmly. "Jesus won't. He's the only one who won't go away, Samuel. Even when we think he's gone, he keeps standing there waiting for us to look." For him that afternoon, while the others were playing, Samuel sat alone in the garden. The sun was weak, the wind was blowing light. He took a stick and started scratching the floor. Without realizing it, he drew the 2-foot silhouette. "Side by side of yours. If you're there, listen to me," murmured with that voice. "I don't know how to pray, nor do I know if I'm doing it right. But if it's true that you stay close to those who suffer, then please stay here with me, only with me." But something inside him answered. Not with words, it was like a breath, as if the wind wrapped a heat in his chest. There were no lights or voices, nor visible miracles, but there was a presence, a certainty, and for the first time since I lost everything, Samuel felt that someone was listening. The day of the presentation of the stories has arrived. The children were euphoric. Some wore improvised costumes made with cloths, old and cardboard. Others carried drawings and even posters. The activity room was transformed into a small stage, with chairs lined up and a blue towel attached with preachers. How was a children's theater? But in that simple environment, the magic was real. When Donna Beatrice called her first name, the applause got laughter surprises. Little jinxes, it was all party time. Samuel watched everything, sitting quietly as always. But this time, with paper crumpled between your fingers, it was the first time he would get up to speak in front of all, and the hardest AI tell its own story. The story I had never had the courage to share aloud, neither with the children nor with himself. But now something inside him was asking for it. He needed to tell, needed to put out what had been stuck for so long. Not out of attention, not pity, but because something in your heart said maybe, just maybe, his pain could touch other pains when they called his name. A different poison spread. The children stopped, looked for him with surprise until Donna Augusta, in the background, raised his eyes slowly, like someone waiting. But I didn't know if it would happen. Samuel got up slowly, walked to the little Platea Center, and held the paper tightly. Got deep, the eyes were running, the familiar faces in front of you. But they didn't stop at any until he lifted his head and spoke softly but firmly about my story. Starts in an I was 4 years old car. I was in the back seat sleeping my mom and dad. Discussed something that I didn't understand was night. It rained suddenly. Everything turned into tears. I remember broken glass. I remember the smell of gasoline and the noise of sirens. After that, I don't remember much. I just remember that they did not return to the room. Got completely changed, Samuel Ngolu dry, but continued after the accident. Nobody wanted to stay with me. I passed by the houses of relatives who were looking at me. As a problem, I was getting behind. One day I ran away. I thought it would be better alone. I slept in squares. I ate leftovers. I was afraid, very afraid. But the worst wasn't the hunger. It was the emptiness. The worst thing was having no one to ask if I was okay. The worst was having no one to call me by name. He took a long break. Some eyes started to fill. It was one of those cold nights that I met Donna Augusta. She gave me soup and heat, but no. The warmth of the blanket was the warmth of someone who looked into my eyes, like, "Who said you care?" She brought me here, and ever since, I'm here billions of people. But for a long time, I still felt alone. The children were now nobody. Esimexia, not even the little ones. And then one night, I dreamed of a man. He had light in his eyes and told me I could call Jesus, that if I let him in, he would never, but would leave me at the beginning. I thought it was just another thing in my head. But then I felt no. I saw a miracle. I didn't gain family. I didn't become rich. But I felt something I've never felt before. He looked up, holding the cry, and for the first time spoke the name tenderly. I felt Jesus, not the Jesus of the Bible stories that I heard here, but the Jesus who enters the garden of our soul, O Jesus, who listens to what we don't have the courage to say. I didn't ask for a toy, neither home nor peace. I asked for heat, and he gave me a heat that cannot be explained, but that embraces inside. Samuel then doubled the role, saved in pocket, and concluded, "This is my story. The story of the boy who lost it all, but found someone who never left." And if you're listening too, feel this hole inside, know that he still listens, even when we can only cry in silence. The room was in silence until adults. Donna Beatrice, she took her hand to Boca. The children didn't know very well how to react. Was as if time had stopped for a few seconds. Samuel looked at everyone with a slight smile, one that no one Ali had seen before. Was a shy smile, but someone's smile is really full, who for the first time did not feel invisible. After training came the applause, but it wasn't that applause. Of always were delayed, moved. The children clapped slowly, like who had just heard something much bigger than I imagined. That night, Samuel slept with the window open. The wind came in and swayed the arrow slowly. He looked up at the sky in no hurry to close his eyes. And in the heart, I repeated the words I said every night. Since that dream, thank you, Jesus, for not leaving. How many times have you ever felt such a big emptiness inside your chest? Who couldn't even explain such a character? Deep, that seemed to insert an invisible hole that no one sees, but that it consumes inside sometimes. We smile on the outside, participate in the conversations, is surrounded by people, but inside it's like we're alone. In a crowd, it was like this with Samuel. And maybe at some point in your life, have the story of Samuel been like that with you too? Starts with a loss that many people unfortunately know. Well, the loss of the family, but not all mourning is for death sometimes. We lose people who are still alive. Sometimes we are abandoned, forgotten, ignored, and it hurts. Because we are made for affection, for the hug, for belonging. No one is born to be disposable. No one should grow up feeling worthless. But life often doesn't ask if we're ready. She just happens when someone leaves without warning. When a home becomes a strange place, when promises break and hugs cool. It was like this with Samuel, a boy of only 4 years old, losing father and mother on an ordinary night, and from Dali, starting a journey that no heart so small should face. Iveg was rejected, slept in the streets, knew the cold of not have a place to lie, but the worst cold wasn't the body. It was Alma's, it was the cold of not have who cares. And maybe it's at that point in the story that she begins to meet her, because even if you've never lived on the street, maybe you already dwelt in, maybe you already looked around and felt that no one really saw you. And know what is crueler is when we are told that there are people with bigger problems, is when they invalidate our pain. She had to be measured by a universal ruler, but pain is pain, and abandonment be in a corner. Or in a full house, it's still abandonment. Doesn't choose a place, she arrives and settles in. And if it is not taken care of, it becomes an endless well. Samuel was found by a lady who extended his hand, and Ali, for the first time, In a long time, he felt something different welcome. It wasn't a complete solution. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was a fresh start. A small sign that there were still people capable of loving. And that is enough to rekindle hope. At the adopted children's orphanage, Samuel still felt alone, and that it also happens to many of us, because does not is the absence of people, is the absence of connection. You can be in an environment full of people and still feel that no one really knows you, that no one would know what to say. If you collapsed, that no one would notice. If you stopped being Ali, but it was in that studio, in the dark room, that something extraordinary happened. It was not a strong light nor an angel with wings. Not even a movie miracle was a dream. A breath, a presence, a soft voice that said, "You can know Jesus." And that sentence, so simple in a wounded heart, became the seed of a transformation. Samuel didn't know how to pray. He didn't have pretty words. Didn't make promises. He just said how he felt. He just asked what he needed, and asked what few have the courage to ask for: human warmth. An invisible hug, a love that won't go away, a presence that stays even when everything falls apart. And Jesus at that moment listened, not with his ears, but with the heart. This part of the story is a silent turn, more powerful, because it reminds us that God doesn't need a stage. To act, he enters the dark room. In the most hidden thought, I do not cry under the influence, on the pillow, and is present even when we doubt, even when we can only whisper, "One helps me without strength." Maybe you are living such a time. Maybe it's surrounded by people, but feeling alone. Maybe nobody forgets what you're loading. Maybe like Samuel, you just want to be heard, no, by someone who gives you advice, but by someone who just stays. And the best good news of all is that Jesus stays. Samuel asked heat only, that did not ask house, nor toy, nor that his parents came back. He just wanted heat, no. The heat from the blanket that warmed the body, but the warmth of the look that welcomes the warmth of a said name with care. The heat of knowing that you are no longer alone. When he dreamed of Jesus, maybe he didn't even know what it really means, but still replied, "Because there are pains so deep that only God understands." And he understands even when we don't know how to explain. How many times have you tried to count what he felt and couldn't? How many times did you keep it all inside? Because he thought no one would understand, or worse, because you've tried before and was judged, diminished, ignored. There is a type of pain that we hide even from ourselves. And over time, she becomes part of our routine. We learn to smile on the wound, learn to pretend it's all, well, learn to say I'm fine, when inside it's in pieces. And that's why Samuel's prayer was so powerful, because she came from a raw place without masks. A sincere, simple request from the bottom of a heart, who just wanted to be seen. And the truth is that Jesus always hears this kind of prayer. He doesn't need rehearsed words. He doesn't expect perfect phrases. What he wants is true, and when he finds it, he enters, he acts. He turns Samuel into the center of attention. After that, he didn't get gifts, neither fame nor spectacular miracles. But inside it, something has changed. Because the biggest miracle isn't what happens around. It's what happens inside, and that emptiness that hurt started to be filled not all at once, but little by little, like someone who fills a glass with patience. And the first sip he took was peace. The peace of knowing that there is a love that does not cobra. It doesn't require, it doesn't go away. A love that comes, sits next to it, and says, "I'm here." And that, my friend changes everything. Because when we understand that God is on our side, even when no one, but we start walking differently, we still stumble, still feel scared, still cries sometimes, but he is no longer alone. Because now there's a hand holding ours in the dark. And you already had this moment. has ever allowed himself to say, as Samuel, a sincere request. To God sometimes, we wait for certain times in certain places. Perfect and mature spirituality to talk to Jesus, but he's not expecting that. He enters the disorganized room of your mind. He gets into your soul's mess. He enters to the days where you are ashamed to look up because he knows he saw every tear, that no one saw every dawn, that you turned trying to understand. Where did every swallowed word get lost? So as not to worry others every effort, to look good when the heart. I had already screamed for help. Jesus saw, and more than that, he felt it for you, and that was it. That Samuel discovered that night that he was not more alone than her pain was not invisible, that his name still mattered, and as much as life had tried to silence his voice, now he could speak because someone himself. God was listening to this story. It's not just him. This story can be your, because we all at some point, we are a little like Samuel, lost, broken, trying to look strong when all we want is Colo. But the good news is that the Colo de Jesus has no waiting line. There is no, you don't need to deserve. You just have to ask if you're hearing this now and felt your heart squeeze. Maybe it's God calling you. Maybe it's Jesus telling you like this. As I told Samuel, you can call me. I will never leave you. And maybe, just maybe, what you're looking for so much. Don't be outside, don't be in people, in achievements or NAS responses that haven't come yet. Maybe what are you looking for? Be an invisible but real hug, a heat that cannot be seen but that heals. And this heat has a name, believe me. If this story touched your heart, take a deep breath. And before going away, leave it here in the comments. What was the moment where you most needed a hug and only found oxygen? Sometimes sharing the pain is the first step to heal. If you know someone who needs to hear this today, this video for her sometimes, a word can be the hug that's missing. And if you believe Jesus too can warm hearts, Samuel SE subscribes to the channel, activates the bell, and stay with us. Because here we tell stories that welcome, and you'll never walk alone ever again.